So I bought a new dipstick tube, and I didn't realize until I went to put this in that the small block Chevy has both an upper and a lower dipstick tube. So there's supposed to be another tube in here that guides the dipstick to make sure that it doesn't, and it shouldn't get into the crank counterweights, but that's what this lower dipstick tube is for. The block I tore down did not have a lower dipstick tube, and from what I understand, it's pretty common that an engine that's been rebuilt once before not to have it. But I went ahead and bought one, and I'm going to put that in now. I'll put the lower tube in first and then the upper, and then I took my pan back off because I just wanted to verify exactly where this dipstick was pointing to make sure that I didn't have any issues with it rubbing the counterweights. Okay, that's bottomed out. So I should be able to go ahead and install my upper tube. I've got a 7/16 wrench here. That's what I'm going to use to try to tap this in. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm ready to put my pan back on. I didn't really go over this pan much. This pan has a windage screen, a crank scraper, and a baffle in the bottom. I did take out the bolts. I had to do a little bit of modification. I had to cut this part of the windage screen out to clear my oil pickup. This is the slot where the dipstick goes down in. But I did take the bolts, the screws out, and Loctited those in. Okay, I got a few things done last night. Got that oil dipstick in, the oil pan back on. So I'm ready to drop my lifters and push rods in. I've got some comp cams lube here. I'm going to put on the bottom, the flat bottom of the lifter as I stick them in. So that's what we're going to try to do. Just wipe the bottom off, dip it in the comp cams lube, and get it in the hole. I don't know if you remember, but if you watched my block prep video, Originally, I could not get any. I was test fitting the lifters, and they would not fit in either of these front two cylinders. I had to hone those out. They're going in just fine now. I bought a set of Comp Cam's hardened push rods. They are the stock length push rod for a small block Chevy flat tappet cam. I believe they were like 7 7/8 or 7.9 inches. Part number 7812-16 push rod set, CS high energy. If you are running guide plates, it's important that you have hardened push rods. I have Iski roller tip rocker arms. They are a stamped steel rocker arm with a roller tip. They do, they're not self-aligning, so they do use the guide plates, and they've got a longer slot for the higher lift. Okay, I've got my rocker arms on, and they've all been lashed to zero lash. Rather than show you what I did, I'm just going to put a link in the description of the video I used. The one I found most helpful by I think it's Ellison Machine Shop over on the East Coast. So anyway, I'll put you a link to his video on adjusting valve lash in the description below. But they've all been adjusted to zero lash. I've rolled the engine over several times, and now I'm going to put a half turn of preload on each valve. Then I'm going to put in my set screws, the posi locks or poly locks. Then I'll give it another quarter turn, turning both the nut and the poly lock at the same time to make sure they're locked down good and tight. But I'm going to give each valve a half turn of preload. Putting the final quarter turn. So I bring the posi lock just down till it's nice and snug, and then I turn both of them together. To get that extra quarter turn of preload. Getting ready to put on my intake manifold. First thing I'm going to do is clean everything up with a little denatured alcohol. I prefer to use acetone, but I'm out of acetone. But I always seem to have some denatured alcohol around. These gaskets aren't supposed to require any sealer, but if if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm probably going to put some on, at least around these water jackets. The corners where they meet the China rail. Actually, the Fel-Pro gasket set that I got did not include gaskets for the China rails. It included a tube of RTV to use on the China rails. These are a steel shim gasket, which is supposed to be stronger since they don't have the bolt holes in the center there. I'm going to put another dab right on those corners on top of this gasket. Thing is, if you get too much, you have a chance of it getting into your lifter valley and going down and clogging up your pickup tube screen. According to the instructions that came with the gaskets, these torque to 132 inch-pounds. Okay, the intake is on and torqued down. The camera kicked off on me because the hard drive was full. So I didn't get the torquing, but it's pretty simple. You've only got 8 bolts and you do a crisscross pattern, 3 equal steps, 132 foot-pounds. Inch-pounds, inch-pounds, inch-pounds. So next thing I'm going to do is get my oil in it. I know it would have been easier to pour the oil in the lifter valley, but I can still put it down the distributor opening. So I'm going to take, I've got an oil filter on there. I'm going to take it off, fill the oil filter, and then put the 7 quarts of oil in the distributor opening. Okay, you're probably noticing I'm wearing a different color shirt. I was wearing a black or dark blue. Got my oil in. I hooked up my oil pressure gauge and got my priming tool out and started running the oil pump to prime it, make sure I had oil pressure, and to kind of bleed the system, get it up through all these push rods and so on. And they say if you're a YouTuber, you gotta show the bad with the good. Well, I totally missed on this driver's side over here next to where where I've got my oil pressure gauge. There is another plug here that I missed getting in, and unfortunately it's not just under the intake, but the head also sits over. So this intake that I just put on and sealed, I'm going to have to pull off, and I'm going to have to pull this driver's side head off. I'll have to go through the whole process of torquing, lashing valves, doing all that over again, just because I missed this one plug. And what happened is when I started priming this pump, as soon as I got oil pressure, it came squirting out this direction, hit me right in the belly. So I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to quit for today, go in, sit down, cool off, watch some TV, and we'll get back at it tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll pull this intake, pull this head, get a plug in there. I've already researched. That should be the only thing I'm missing is this one plug right here. And I will bring the camera around and show you exactly where that is, so that if someone else is doing this, hopefully they don't make the same mistake I did. Just to the left of where the oil pressure gauge is that that second oil galley, and you can see it actually sits mostly under the head. But that is where the oil came squirting out. I don't know why I didn't see that. Probably in my mind I was thinking that was covered with the head, but I should have known better. Newbie, rookie mistake. But that's why I'm doing this. It's all about learning and doing this myself. Thanks for watching. God bless. Okay, it's the next day. I got this intake and head pulled off, and right there's the plug that I missed getting in. Don't know how I did that. Head gasket does kind of partially cover it, but there's no reason for me to have missed it. I don't remember taking it out when I tore the block down. Doesn't mean I didn't, it's just been a long time. But anyway, something to watch so you don't make the same mistake I did. Okay, we're getting down to the close to the end, and I gotta confess I'm getting a little lazy about videotaping this. It just takes so much time to video it, and slows down work, and then of course there's more time in editing and putting the video together. But and I'm down to what's pretty ordinary run-of-the-mill stuff anyway. But I wanted to show a couple things. I got one of my valve covers on, and I'm getting ready to get the other one modified. I wanted to run these stock Vortec valve covers, but if you notice, they've got this little cross piece webbing from the tube out to the sides. Well, that cross piece hits on the guide plate. So in order to get it to be able to fit down on there like it should, I have to cut one side of that out. I'd also wanted to run stud girdles on this, but stud girdles with the guide plates, I believe, is a problem, because you have to go to a perimeter bolt valve cover, and those perimeter bolt valve covers, the adapters, those won't work because of the way this middle head stud is. So I'm sure there's a solution, but my original intention was to run these stock Vortec valve covers. So that's what I'm going to do for now, and I may in the future try to get some adapters and some taller valve covers and get this set up so that I can run stud girdles, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm getting impatient. I want to get this thing running and get moved on to the car. Here's a look at the valve cover I've already got modified. Show you how I trimmed that web out. I also had to take a little bit off. That tube is flared for the bolt to come through, and that flare was hitting on the guide plate. So I cut part of the web out, and I ground a little bit of that flare off. Will this thing work without leaking? I don't know. It is the upper side, so there should be less oil there. I'm just going to try it. We'll see. I'm going to put gasket sealant on the valve cover side of the gasket. I don't know whether I'm going to put it on the actual head side of the gasket or not, because I do expect I'll be taking these off to either retorque the heads or possibly relash the valves once everything is broken in. So I probably will not put any gasket sealant on the head side, just on the valve cover side, and see how it goes. I'm getting ready to put my water pump on, but before I do, one thing I remember is that these two bolt holes here go through to where they go all the way through to the inside of the block, to where the fuel pump would normally mount. I do believe they're designed for bolting on accessories, but I want to make sure I get those plugged. Otherwise I will probably have some oil come out of those and drip. There are two more on the other side, but those bottom out. They're not open to the inside of the block. But these on my left here, passenger side, go through to the inside of the block, and I'm going to put a couple bolts on there with thread sealer just to make sure I don't have any oil drips.